But we start tonight in Illinois with our debrief and the investigation into the deadly shooting of July's shooting rampage that is now turning toward the suspect's family. Robert Crimo III is charged with 7 counts of murder after Monday's mass shooting. A judge has ordered Crimo held without bond. Crimo's attorney says he will plead not guilty to the charges when he is arraigned later this month. Now, Lake County prosecutors also promise that dozens more charges will be filed. Now, Crimo is charged with using a rifle similar to an AR-15 to spray more than 70 rounds from the top of a commercial building overlooking the Independence Day parade route. His family is now speaking out after the tragedy. His father, Bobby Crimo Jr., told ABC News, "I had not an inkling, warning that this was going to happen. I am just shocked." And Crimo's uncle Paul spoke with CNN about whether he saw any signs his nephew could execute this tragic act of violence. Take a listen.
There's nothing that I seen that he had no mental episodes or nothing. There's no police calls to our house, nothing that would lead me for this to happen. There's no signs of nothing that I had seen.
Now, investigators say Crimo did pass 4 separate background checks in order to purchase multiple weapons. In all, Crimo bought 5 firearms. 4 of the guns were purchased while he was under 21, and he bought the 5th rifle just after his 21st birthday last year. Crimo's dad sponsored his applications for the guns purchased before he turned 21. And today, the funerals began for some of the 7 victims. Reporter Katie Crowther from affiliate WTMJ talked to survivors about how they're processing the trauma from the mass shooting.
Wooden hearts with the name of each victim, surrounded by flowers, candles, and messages. Another heart added as we stood there for Eduardo Uvaldo, a grandfather from Waukegan, identified as the 7th victim. Steve Tilkin was at the parade with his grandchildren, just a few feet from where some people died.
Our granddaughter, who's 13, went through active shooter training in grade school. And so she hit the ground crying and took her brother. My wife jumped on top of her. Then I stood briefly looking at where the shooter was coming from, still in a state of disbelief. And then I jumped on both of them. And I sort of look around and realize we're not in front of any barricade. There's nothing protecting us. That one bullet can go through all of us. So when the shooting subsided briefly, I said, let's just run for the store.
They hid in the store's basement with others, some injured. At one point, police came down searching for the gunman.
It was like one of those eerie TV sequences where they're saying clear, clear as they go through each corner.
Melissa Canada was in the same area with her husband, 5-year-old daughter, and 2-year-old son.
A lot of people mistook it for fireworks, but I knew it wasn't fireworks, and I looked up. I saw the shooter. I saw bullets coming out of the gun. My first instinct was to just grab my kids and run.
She can't help but think of Irina and Kevin McCarthy, who died protecting their 2-year-old. It could have been you.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. Keeping me up at night is, just having my son in my arms and watching my daughter right in front of me. It's a miracle we're alive, so.
Melissa, Steve, and so many others processing the trauma.
It's the horror. What makes somebody so evil?
Find themselves here, sitting, reflecting, holding hands, praying together.
That you would bring comfort and hope, Father, to this community.
And here, just a few blocks away at Highland Park High School, counselors and psychologists from all over are donating their time, making themselves available for anyone who shows up and simply needs to talk. Also, many community members have been donating food, art supplies, stuffed animals, and other comforts for anyone who shows up here. In Highland Park, Katie Crowther, TMJ4 News.
All right, I think this country needs a collective hug, to be quite frank. All right, joining me now, forensic psychologist Dr. John Delatorre and trial attorney Krista Ramey. Thank you both for joining me this evening. John, I'll begin with you because I guess where I want to start is, we see these young people doing these things. And as I think about it, I say to myself, you know, throughout time, we've had disaffected youth who felt disconnected, had issues, problems, but now we're seeing them act out with guns, right? I don't know what they would use previously, maybe music, maybe something else. But now we're seeing guns. Is that merely because there are more guns? Like, what are your thoughts when you look at this from a psychological perspective?
I mean, when I look at it through a psychological perspective, there's a ton of things that I think about. The first thing is that a lot of these individuals had suicidal ideation prior, that they externalized, right, that they turned outward and it became homicidal ideation. There's some things that suggest that this was a performance crime, right? There's a lot of issues in this kid's background that all of a sudden it makes it look like this wasn't about ideology. This wasn't about extremism. This was about someone who wanted to put on a show, and he wanted to put on a show and have a spotlight, and he did everything he could to put on a second show, right, including dressing up as a woman to try to escape. And yes, this is about disaffected youth. This is about conspiracy theories. This is about a negative feedback loop that happens on social media, right? There's a lot of things that are going on that we are not paying attention to because we're too focused on this idea that this is about mental illness and guns. Yes, we need better gun regulation, but banning all guns isn't going to stop this. There's going to be violence, and we need to work on having all of us have that collective hub, right? To have that therapeutic intervention that we need in order to be a better society.
Yeah, because I think one thing we're seeing, John, with a lot of these situations is there's absolutely signs. There's always signs. I mean, the question is, are we reading them correctly? And I think what we want to get to when you have a situation like this, I guess I'm going to call it a silver lining, is to find out what he was thinking, why he did this. How do we go about doing that?
Well, we could establish threat assessment teams, right, in the community and through schools. There's clearly, he had weapons taken away, knives, swords, and other stuff taken away from him. These kinds of things need to stay with these individuals. Once it happens, you can never lose track of these kinds of individuals. Red flag laws, both federal and through the state, that allow psychologists like myself and other threat assessors to come in and evaluate these individuals to make sure that we are doing the appropriate threat management and threat interventions for these kinds of individuals and the things that they might do.
You know, interestingly enough, there were red flag laws in Illinois. No one thought to invoke them for this particular kid. And that leads me to this next part that, you know, the parents are being looked at here. We saw this out in Michigan. The Lake County prosecutor has not ruled out charging Crimo's parents, telling reporters that he doesn't want to answer that question right now as the investigation continues. Now, Crimo's father spoke to ABC News about helping his son purchase firearms, as I mentioned earlier. He said, "I filled out the consent form to allow my son to go through the process that the Illinois State Police have in place for an individual to obtain an FOID card. They do background checks. Whatever that entails, I'm not exactly sure. And either you're approved or denied," and he was approved. And in response to sponsoring his son's gun purchases, he said, "Do I regret that? No, not 3 years ago. Signing a consent form to go through the process, that's all it was. Had I purchased guns throughout the years and given them to him in my name, that's a different story. But he went through the whole process himself." Now, Krista, I want to bring you in because, again, people are saying that maybe there's some liability, and they're looking to Michigan and the Crumblies. There's some liability here. You hear his responses. He's putting up a wall between what he did and what I guess the authorities didn't do. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he's drawing a distinction. He's saying that had I had all this information about my son, certainly he knew that his son had these prior issues, that he had these knives taken away, and that he was labeled a clear and present danger. And he knew what his son's propensities were. He was his father, for Christ's sake. So, you know, he draws this distinction that if I knew all of this and then gave him guns, that would be different. Then I would have regret. But because the authorities failed in some way, all I did was sign a consent form. But what he's not realizing is, but for the fact that he signed that consent form, none of, you know, that's how he initially gets these weapons when he's under the age of 21. So he's not really accepting responsibility. He's laying blame. I think he also realizes that he is potentially in trouble after, we know what is going on with the Michigan school shooting with the Crumbly family. So, as you mentioned, so I think that he is very aware. He's hired himself a very good lawyer, and we shall see what happens.
Yeah, I think R. Kelly's old lawyer is representing him. John, what's interesting about this, and I'm struggling with this idea of holding parents responsible under these types of circumstances. People have distinguished between the Crumbleys in this case, where the Crumbleys were so egregious in what they did. I don't necessarily agree with that. From your perspective, psychologically, parents, they want to think the best of their kids. And when we start talking about the different parenting styles, what we want to do with our children, what we expect of our children, do you think it's fair to begin to look at charging parents in these types of situations?
I do, and I do because most of the times when these individuals commit the crimes, it's not because they purchased them on their own. It's not because they stole them. It's because they were borrowed, right? That they took it from their own family home. Either it was given to them as a gift in the case of the Crumleys, or it was sponsored in this case for the Highland Park shooter. So I do think it is fair to start looking at the parents, because the parents always need to parent, right? They can't be friends. And this guy's all tattooed all over the face and everything like that. To say that they didn't know that something was going on with him, it is preposterous. So no, I do think we need to start having the parents be held responsible for some part, right, complicit in some part of the act committed by their children.
And that's fair enough, because they were the ones that knew of these other incidents. When the background checks happened, they didn't show up. In fact, when he tried to kill himself, he also was a threat to others as well, making threats. They knew that. It was within their power to deal with it. I want to listen to his uncle now. He responds to that 2019 incident where his son allegedly threatened his family, threatened killing himself as well. He told ABC News that making threats to the family, I think, that was taken out of context. It's like just a child's outburst, whatever he was upset about. And I think his sister called the police. I wasn't living there. Again, deflecting, Krista, moving things aside, not taking responsibility. And there's this issue of, could we have more laws? Could it have stopped it? There's also an issue that this other stuff didn't show up. But at the end of the day, I have to agree with John, and I want to get your thoughts, that this knowledge was within the province of the parents. I think holding them responsible puts it in the hands of the people best suited to deal with some of these issues. Your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, I think that, you're talking potentially like criminal negligence. They knew all of this information. They had the ability to help their son, to push their son into rehab, to get their son the psychological help that he clearly needed. But yet they didn't do it. Instead, they sponsor him to get a weapon. I mean, it really is mind-blowing to me. And it's not a childhood outburst to say you want to kill people. I raised 2 children very successfully, and neither one of them in the fit of the most ridiculous tantrum ever threatened to kill me or my husband or anyone around us. That is not normal outbursts. That is not normal behavior. And they had this information. They knew about it, and yet they, here his father is sponsoring him to get a weapon. I think that looking at, what more information they may have had, I think it would be wise for a prosecutor not to rule that out and see where it takes them, and potentially charge for whatever it is, wherever the evidence leads them.
Yeah, we're going to be keeping an eye on this one, because I have a feeling that may happen in this particular case. A lot of outrage in this situation. Well, thanks to John Delatorre for joining me. Truly appreciate it, John. Always a real pleasure to have you on the show.